This is May 17th, 1997, and this is in Emporia, Kansas, at the 12th Armored Division picnic. I'm Amber McClendon with the Allen Christian University Shoe Department, and this is Tom White. And
Tom White from Northern, Missouri, and I was with the 495th Field Artillery Battalion. I also had my officers rating through Fort Sill, Oklahoma, OCS, Officers Candidate School.
Okay, I'll start now. First I just wanted to ask you about your home life when you were a child, and what influences your mother and father had on you, and what it was like for you growing up.
Started when I grew up on a farm in the 30s. I was born in 1921, and I guess you'd say that was rough years for the farmers in that there was no money and no way you can get it. But my father always told me this. He had a friend at the University of Missouri, and he says, you ought to have some chickens. So he built 2 chicken houses. At that time they were big. Now they're awful small and not practical. But that's how we got started, and then it seems if, as time went on, we got enough money and they sent me to the university and on agriculture and animal husbandry. Then, as in February in 1943, I was inducted into the Army, and I went to OCS. I was inducted in February and went to OCS the following August and completed to a second lieutenant in September 1943. And then I went to the 12th Armored for training till I went overseas or whatever. So then I was with the 12th Armored from September to December the 31st, 1944, I guess. Well, 43, 44. But after I went with the 12th, I had all kinds of training, including the survey school and what have you. Then 12th went overseas, and at that time, somehow or another, they lost my records, and I was delayed about 2 or 3 weeks to catching another boat, and I went overseas on a boat that's Count Grande, 12,000 passenger luxury liner that had been converted to troops. And so then I landed in Naples, and even though I'd done a lot of training on the 12th, I went on and to Italy, and I was with the American Army there, and toward the end, or toward the middle of it, I was assigned to the Italian Army with mules, and I was with them 9 months. And I was through the Apennines and the Po River Valley and crossed into the Alps. And all the time I was getting some pretty good experience, and even though to me it wasn't hard work, but I spent lots of hours trying to see that everything was right. And so then I got in Italy, and then I went to military government, and I had a lot of experience there. I was responsible for placing several 100,000 tons of food in Linz, Austria. And then too, in that summer, they gave me a PW, prisoner of war camp, that I was commanding officer over it. So I'll relate a little story. So when with this 12th Armored was with this German PW, they didn't have their supplies, TME, for the clothing to be repatriated back to Germany. Then I went to Florence, or Leghorn, I'll go to Varno, and there I managed to get one copy and took them back to the camp, and then I got some paper and had them run off enough for 1,000 copies for the 1,000 German PWs. So I'd given this German captain was in charge. I was answering to him, and I said, I want you to go through all these 1,000 German PWs and make note of any clothing wasn't in satisfactory condition for them to go back. So the next day I came back and I told him, I said I was going to expect military courtesy, and I came back. So when I walked in the gate, I said, attention, and they all popped attention, and I asked the captain what he had done. He said, I thought I'd let you do it. I said, it'll be done by tomorrow night, but you were in water for 30 days. And he acted pretty quick. The American officer telling him what to do. And then I went up in Austria in military government, and I was an assistant, first or second lieutenant, who was General Hume's aide. And so we were supposed to go with these people to, it was about Christmas time, and it was about zero. And we were supposed to go there and see that they didn't have any trouble getting on the airplane to fly to Italy. Well, the first thing, we couldn't get in the gate. And through work, we got in the gate, and Pat was there, and he was giving us a hard time, I guess. Maybe that isn't the right phrase I should use. But, so anyhow, we stayed all night. And we slept in the best hotel in Salzburg, but it so happened one corner, there's a gap just all the way up, just about that wide, foot wide. And it was, I think it was around 10 below that morning in that room. And no heat, no clothes, no winter clothes, but they had the powder, or the feather fluff, and so we got them on the train, on the plane, but while we were waiting, there was two German soldiers came up and said to me, Oberstleutnant, we thank you. Said our unit was repatriated back in Germany before any of the others were. We thank you. That shouldn't have happened to anybody in a million years, but it did. And I'm not telling some of the things that the war, I was in as much of the war as I'm sure anybody else, but some of those little things made life a little more interesting. So, but I was in the Apennines, I had the mules up there. We went on across the pole up to the German border, at Brenner Pass, and we had, I think as a whole, we did our part in the Army, and I might say that I had points and everything to come home and 442nd Battalion wouldn't release me. And I was sort of interested, and I wanted to come home bad. I hadn't been home for pretty near 2 years. So we just getting this thing. But I wanted to come home, and there's a lieutenant in that says, your orders to come home were cut 5 or 6 times, but the colonel wouldn't let you go. And he says, incidentally, he was the Red Cross field director of Southern Europe. He says, you got orders from the Red Cross to come home immediately. So I came home on the Red Cross. And maybe that's nothing to brag about or think about, but that's the way things happened at that particular day. I don't know whether you want to have any war stories or not, but I tried to make it somewhat interesting. And I think I just would have cut it off over there. Have you got some questions you want?
Well, I had a few questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you said you worked General Patton.
Yes.
So could you tell me a little bit how you feel about General Patton and what that was like?
General Patton definitely was a general who had no regard for human life. In that he commanded the field. He commanded to win, no matter how he won. That was his idea, is to go for the last dollar. And it seemed like sometimes that it shouldn't have been that way. But he was a general and I was a second lieutenant, first lieutenant. So it shouldn't make any difference what I thought. But all right, second question.
Okay. With your work with the German prisoners of war, again, how did you feel about them?
Working with them in that PW camp, I ate dinner with them pretty near every day. To me, they were the best friends I had. And I regretted that they had to become friends that way. But they treated me like a king in that camp. And maybe I shouldn't say that. But I felt that they were still humans. And if we could just get all the war over and everybody go back to their place, that everybody would be happier.
Hey, how long did you do that? How long were you over the prisoner of war?
How long I was with them? It was from about 2.5 months, 3. I was with the Italian Army for 9 months. Yeah.
What did you do with the Italian Army?
I asked the colonel, I said, I was assigned to the Italian Mule Group. And I had 40 mules and 40 Italian soldiers to carry supplies up to the mountains where the GIs were holding observation area. And they were well tried to win the war by advancing. And so I felt like that I did it. That's about as much as anybody could. All right.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I'm sorry. When you came home, what was that like?
What was it like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's something that you'd look forward to for several years. And my mother was looking forward to me when I came home. Our family was Barry, they worked together on putting anything, and so my father had gone to St. Louis to pick me up at Jefferson Barracks, and when we drove home, and when we got home to where my mother was, she was by herself, and it had a tornado go through and knocked putting all the windows out of the house, and it was quite a, I don't know what kind of receiving, but it was quite a deal, quite a shock when we walked in the room and we had to get a pan and broom to sweep up the glass. But it was part of life.
It's coming home.
It's gonna go.
Did you help in liberating any of the concentration camps? Were you a part of that?
Yes and no. We provided, help set up so they'd have transportation, and we, I was down at most of the time the railhead when they'd come in and try to help them get them on their way, and it was quite a hard problem, and I felt that I had, after it's over with, I had more interest in it because we sponsored a camp, or a family to come, and they worked for my father and me they didn't work for about 2 or 3 months, and they couldn't say enough bad things about the Americans, the way they treated the DP and so forth. But after they finally went back to New York, and now they call me up on the telephone, we're buddies. And it's really something how they could change and go from one extreme to the other. But they did.
Do you have any stories that you want to tell about the war that would...
Well, maybe I've been talking too much.
No, you cannot ever talk too much.
But it seems I had some experience. It seemed like every day that something new come up. And I always tried to take advantage of anything that come up to my benefit. And it meant, well, I don't know, I had one little experience that had taken a group of soldiers on a training mission. I'm not going to mention too much. And came back, and it's about midnight, and we've been gone 2 weeks. All of a sudden there's a bucket of water come through the window. And this was at Bartlett. I don't know about you, but made me sort of upset. Man, I cleaned his plow. The next day I was transferred. But I got together with him through various circumstances. And, well, still I think that 495th was as good outfit as was in the Army.
So you were transferred for that? And where'd you go after then?
What,
After you were transferred?
what did it?
After you were transferred?
Oh, my transfer?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm jumping around a lot on this. I asked, when I went to Italy and was confronted with these mules, and I didn't speak any English, and of course they didn't speak any Italian, but so I felt like I had to do something. You know, this is hard to believe, but I got me a book on Italian, American, Italian. And I learned the conjugation of the verbs, I am, you are, he is, and all that. and it had it in black and white. And I worked pretty constantly for 16 hours. And when I finally, I'd hardly go eat, and I'd write and trace and write and study and just do everything. I didn't have much book, but I tried to get all I could. And as time went on, I had to transfer these mules back to remount station. And I don't know whether the language helped any or not, but those mules, I got them back. And I asked the colonel, I said, now what did I do to justify having mules during the Army for my work? Oh, he says, Lieutenant, no problem at all. He says, you were born on a farm, and your father was a farmer, and he raised a lot of stock, and you went to University of Missouri, and you had a degree in animal husbandry, and I know something else. And he says, where in the hell do you think I put you except in with the mules? Well, I didn't have a chance to express more opinion of it, but I had some more words I could have used. I don't know, is this kind of what you had in mind?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else.
You're doing just fine. You're doing good. Do you have any questions? Can we go back to Camp Barkley?
Yes.
And I want to ask you about General Brewer. Now, did you work with General Brewer, or were you?
No.
No.
I was trying to think of worked with this battery, and some of those in the battery had gone on not vacation, but on leave. And they were, well, they'd taken a full leave, and then during the time they were on leave, I filled in as lieutenant commander, acting lieutenant commander, and I've gone over the rosters they have left, and I'm surprised that there's very few that I knew. So I think it must have been, a lot of this war was fought pretty close to your military home, and it was pretty serious at times.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to tell us?
Well, I could probably, if I'm satisfied with what I did,
Okay.
and I could have changed things some, but I don't think it hurt anybody one way or the other. And those German soldiers, again, they treat me, I go in and eat dinner with them, eat their food and everything, which isn't probably right, but it was, and they all like me. I don't think there's one of them that wouldn't go to hell for me and come back, if you don't put it that way. But they were really, really nice. And at home, I guess I started out a little early. I'm jumping around here, this ain't right, but when I was about 7 or 8 years old, my father said, you go down the field and get that truck for me. And it was a Model T Ford. And of course I wasn't about so big yet. And I went down, I wound it up and brought it up there, but I think there's a time or two I put it in the ditch, maybe not that day, but and so I was always, and then they gave me a fork, and I could load a load of bundles as anybody, and I always wanted to do the best, and always it helped me, I think, a lot in my father's training. We had to work. There was no question about it. And right now, I got 6 of the best children. They're hard worker, and one of them's way up in General Motors. And I've got a nuclear pharmacist in San Francisco. She just got back from London to a conference, and she gets well paid. And I have one doctor in down in Alabama, and we got a nurse in Chicago, and she said her experience. I shouldn't get off on this tangent, but she said that she was assigned to the roughest district in Chicago, and they won't know she wanted to take a guard with her. She said, if I can't handle it by myself, I shouldn't go. But it says, I'm going to try to handle it. And it said, sure enough, she got out in the intersection, and her car stopped. Oh, no. And she had her nurse's uniform and everything. It said there's 2 colored gentlemen over on the curb, kind of eased over, and she thought that was it. And he says, lady, don't be afraid. He says, you're a nurse, and you're taking care of our people, and he says, we're going to see that nothing happens to you. Anytime you're down here with this, you're on a mercy call. And he said, one thing about it, don't worry, because you'll never have to worry about one of theirs attack you, because they won't. And she said, man, no. She'd rather work down there among those poor people than she would up where white people. She said she felt safer down there.
So did you get married after you came back?
Yes, I got married. I knew this gal that married from the time I was 12, 13 years old. My father bought ear corn to feed cattle from her father. And I just will tell another story on her. So I took her out one night. That was a good deal, I guess. And so we got playing bingo. And I won a case of beer. I don't know what you do with beer. You drink it, don't you? So she says, that beer's warm. Says, you come out the house there and we'll cool it, some of it, and drink it. Well, I don't know, but I guess I was hooked in. So we went out to her house, and we didn't get all the beer to drink, quite a bit. And so she invited me back another night to finish it. So from then on, it's the old story that I got hooked.
That's great. So y'all have known each other for a long time, and you were dating before the war.
Was I dating?
Before the war, you were dating.
Yes, some, not very much. I laid out of school one semester to shuck corn by hand for my father, and the next semester for some more work, and then I went down to the university and went straight on through till I got my commission. And I learned a lot in the commission and ROTC at Columbia, and went through that training, and OCS was easy, and I had enough. I always felt like I had enough in me to be right in what I did, and no matter what, and I always felt that I was doing pretty good, and to shoulder my part of the world's bad times or so forth, I feel that I have done my part and will continue.
That's good. Thank you very much.
Do you think that it